come to Christ, you have to be obedient. Like, I remember when I firmly put both my feet back into God, the first thing he said to me was, you have to be obedient. And that, I will never forget. Like, it lingers right all the time. Every time I make a decision, it's like you can trust in God, you can have faith, you can hope, but if you're not obedient, it doesn't work. Because he says in Proverbs 3, verse 5 to 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And lean not unto your own understanding. That is like my favourite verse. I think that verse everywhere with me, and it's just like I use that verse with obedience. It works together. You can't just have one thing and be like, yeah, I trust in God, but then when he tells you something, you're hesitant to even like follow through with it. So it's literally one of those things, when you do something, you have to follow through, you have to be obedient, and you have to have trust as well, because that's all he needs from you. He can't do anything in your life if you don't trust him to take over, because once he takes over, he doesn't come in like, oh, maybe just sort it out. He comes in with full force. Do you know, it's like a SWAT team coming through into a house, they want to find something and get rid of it, or, you know, he will come in with full force and sort out what you want to sort out. If you ask him, he'll give it to you. If you don't ask, he'll casually leave you. But God is not a forceful God. But once you let him in, he takes complete control. So that's one thing you need to remember, like when you're asking God for something, you have to remember what you're asking for. Because if you can't handle it, that's your own problem. Don't be asking God that on Judgment Day, why did you give this to me? You asked for it. When I used to pray, oh God, use me, use me, use me. Did he not use you? He used you with full force. And then you'll think to yourself, why is this situation happening to me? But you asked me to use you, and I brought a blessing through using you. So why are you complaining?
An amazing thing what you said there about how God, he's a forceful God, but in the beautiful thing about his nature as well is when he says he inhabits the praises of his people. I mean, like, and sometimes we as especially Christian rappers, we kind of exclude ourselves from praise or worship because it seems like the art form is very alien to praise and worship. I don't know about everyone else, but I know that I face that struggle throughout the many years of whenever you come to do rap, it's always sectioned off from praise and worship because you guys aren't really doing that thing there. But I don't believe that. I believe that when you come to produce music or you come to play the keys, you come to write lyrics, that's a form of praise. And as you begin to praise in this area, the inhabitation of God comes to live in you as you praise. And I think that's an incredible thing, is which we start to see ourselves with much more weight and responsibility in what we do. Because if God can live in us, even more so when we praise for our rap or production or whatever we do in terms of musical form, how much more when this is actually ministered to other people on stage or for another avenue. I think that is something that's important to see from his character as well, to see that, look, what we're doing is not wrong, or what we're doing is not, he doesn't frown at what we're doing. He's actually going, no, continue to do that and let me come and live in what you're doing and inhabit that, literally take control and just work with you and just create this wonderful, this amazing creation through that music. You know, I find myself like, I sit in my room normally where I write my lyrics and I'm just like, yeah Lord, I'm going to start doing this. I just pray you just bless me, help me. And every single time I'm like, what's that behind me? I can feel something there. Now I'm not one of those kind of dudes, like spiritual stuff happens all the time around me and whatnot, but something was strange. Like, it was like, what is that? And I remember I spoke to my brother about it, like, why every time I come to do music, there's something behind me. There's something there, I know it is. When I'm not doing it, I'm blessed. The minute I start writing bars, playing the keys, there's something behind me, but I'm not scared. What's going on? It's like saying, brother, this is like angels come to pour vows on you. Because what you're doing is worship, what you're doing is praise. God's coming to live in what you're doing because you're doing it for his name, for his glory. And I was like, it took me to a place where it reminds me of how important what we're doing. It's not to be just cast off because it's not in a singing format or a praise and worship format where they repeat it for over and over again. What we do is individual lyrics and working on wordplay and metaphors and so forth. It's still praise. It's still powerful and it's still strong in what we do. And yeah, I think if we keep that in mind as well, that it's like almost like a thumbs up from heaven, like keep doing it, keep doing it, because I'm living in that, I'm inhabiting that. The minute you cut to right, I'm there because yeah, it's for the King.
So
Yeah.
I think we kind of forget just on that point about like the sound of praise and worship, or what we might label as praise and worship in the church. As far as sound is concerned, like there's like a genre or a subgenre that just describes the sound, but then there's a genre which is not necessarily identifying a particular kind of sound per se, but really like the movement or the belief system behind it, or maybe just an aspect of the belief system. Mm-hmm. So with praise and worship, like, well, traditionally speaking, if you think like Hillsong or Bethel, for example, obviously like what you might hear from them, you're likely to hear like in your own local church, like on a Sunday, regular. Not every church is kind of used to hearing, praise and worship in the form of rap. And considering that, because the mainstream part of it, like the secularized stuff, it's more easy accessible as far as like the exposure of it, because you're more likely to get that. As soon as someone comes up and says, "Oh, I'm a Christian and I rap for Jesus," almost kind of subconsciously you kind of put it in that box. Well, oh, like that's the rap form, he's doing it for Jesus, but I consider that rap. You're not too quick to label it as praise and worship as well, but by nature it actually is. It's just that our understanding of what is a genre and like what is a subgenre, what is a movement that actually has a kind of music attached to it, or when there's music involved, like what do you actually title that collection of music as?
I think a really good question comes out of that, which maybe we could just briefly discuss, is the relationship between the rapper and the church. There's a number of churches a number of pastors who perhaps don't quite know what to do when a Christian rapper turns up at their door. Hi, I'm a Christian and I'm a rapper. You're a what? Do you know what I mean? They genuinely got no idea. It is quite a niche thing what we do.
It's like 3 minutes every Easter performance.
Once a year, maybe Christmas if you're lucky. That sort of thing. For me, I've worked with a number of churches, I guess. I personally would encourage any Christian artist watching this that if you're not being nurtured in your gifting by your church, maybe try and find a church which does as well. Speak to your pastor about it first, and if there's no change or improvement in that, then maybe you need to be getting on your knees before Jesus and asking him where he wants you and what he wants you doing, that sort of thing. Because if you're not being developed in your talent, you don't want to be the guy who actually ends up burying his talent because he wasn't pastored right. Do you know what I mean? That sort of thing. Actually, we're called to be fruitful, and if there's things which are hampering and hard, that sort of thing. And it's it's not that the church deliberately makes an error in this. There's just genuinely, pastors are very busy people, and there's like, whoa, what do I do with this? Do you know what I mean? I've got a marriage break going, I've got this going on there, I've got 100 things on my desk, and I've got someone with a unique gifting which I don't understand, I've no experience of, and therefore he doesn't know how to pastor that person faithfully before God, and indirectly the artist can be shelved, which can then make you feel quite suppressed and makes you feel uncomfortable because you're not being faithful in exercising your God-given gifting, etc. Has anyone got any thoughts on that?
I think it comes down to understanding that we shouldn't be labelled. Like in the world, when people ask, oh, so what do you believe in? I say, I'm a believer of Christ. I don't usually use the term Christianity because that's what the world has labelled our faith. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, in the same sense as a rapper going into a church, because church is people, it's not just the building, it's the understanding that comes out of the people. So when they see a rapper, they know, okay, when this guy is rapping, he's definitely talking about Christ. He's definitely talking about Christ and his life and his lifestyle or her lifestyle. So it comes from understanding. Just because they have heard the label rapper, they navigate to the worldly rappers. So they think, okay, the worldly rappers is always associated with negative things. So as believers of Christ, it comes to our own understanding that, yeah, in the world that we live in, there is labels. But when we see our fellow brother and sister, and they've added that label to themselves, it's always drawing back to God. It's always drawing back to the mission. It's always drawing back to the center, which is God. Do you know where I'm coming from with that? So it's like, within a church, like Hillsong that I go to, I know within that church there's so many different people with so many different talents and gifts. But from talking to certain people, people understand they're believers of Christ. But when they do go to certain places where there is people who are not in Christ yet, they still use that label, but they always make sure they know that, yeah, I'm doing this, but God's the center. So if I'm a rapper, I'm rapping for Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Everything that I'm rapping about is about Christ and my faith. Do you know what I mean? So it just literally comes to the understanding of those worldly labels and not actually, like, just being able to push through it, you know, and not being a church that just judges. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, I hope you kind of get what I'm coming from.
I think you've articulated it quite beautifully. Yeah.